I'm Robin Black, and this is It's All About Healing podcast. Today we have a special guest today, Rhonda Parker Taylor. She is the author of Crossroads, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her book and her story that led her to writing the book. Rhonda, how are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. I can't wait to have a good discussion and talk about how adversity can be overcome and the healing process can be a good learning tool for all of us.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey as into starting the book.
Well, originally, when I sat down to write Crossroads, there were two major backstories of myself. The first was I wanted to overcome some of my learning and challenges, even though I'm very academically goal-oriented and purpose-oriented and achieved a lot. One of my weaknesses was writing, and had all my life. I took a mentor in school to take me to the next level, and I wanted to achieve that. So it was a personal goal. But the second thing that I was doing some community service, and I saw the injustices in some of the legal system. And I thought, wow, we need a way of kind of talking about these things and seeing them and realizing that it's not all about you sometimes.
Yeah.
And then as I did it, I realized it really wasn't all about the system, because it was about the characters, and the characters developed into their own story of, wait a minute, I'm not developing myself to my fullest ability.
Absolutely. So what is your journey on finding your full ability? What happened?
Oh, well, for me, it was I play the game of Uncle of Life.
Uh-huh.
Remember the game of Uncle, and you grab each other's hands, and then when you hurt, you say Uncle. Well,
Yeah.
I don't seem to want to change until it hurts.
Yeah.
So I put myself sometimes through things that, you don't always have to go through, but, I take it all the way to that borderline. So
Yeah.
my journey is one of not only being faith-based and trying to be have more discernment about life, but also trying to do an everyday process now, because I don't want to be in those situations. I want to have resiliency already in my body, so when that adversity hits, I'm prepared.
Absolutely.
I don't have an energy storage, because life is going to hit someday, whether you're on a year good path or 2-year path, or maybe never even gone through an adversity before. Someday it's going to hit you. And if you don't have that energy storage, then what ends up happening is you're not prepared, and it can wipe you completely off of your normal day. It may even be too difficult to even get out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have those days.
Yes, daily has a journey. I'm sure everybody has days, but you have to be prepared. So I try to prepare myself, whether it be through journaling, through helping others, doing spiritual growth, having good, healthy relationships around me, which wasn't always one of my practices.
Oh, okay. And so tell us a little bit more about your book. First, is your book available on Audible?
It's not on Audible yet. It's in select Barnes and Noble stores. It also is online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and BAM. It's called Crossroads, and it's about crossroads in a life of the main character. It's a suspense thriller, though. So, it's taking a different approach to taking us through a journey of discovering self at the same time as you're discovering the inner workings of the characters.
And the main character is Paris. And I know you said, or her name is Paris, correct?
That's
right.
Correct.
And there was something in there about the criminal justice system. Can you explain a little bit more to us about that?
Sure. So Paris is a type A personality, raised from very young, even though there's so many different personality types, that you've got to be a type A, you've got to work hard, you have to put everything into work. So she's very driven. She works in the Indianapolis area, and she's in finance, and she gets called to jury duty. So she's never had an experience with the criminal justice system. So she's ends up on a jury for the murder of a 15-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she tries to get out of course. A lot of us try to get out of jury duty, but she can't. And she can't get out of it. And she's exposed to people in the jury that she would maybe never have, affiliated with or had any associations with. And she's also, exposed to people that are in the criminal justice system. She becomes the foreman. And from that period on, her whole life just starts going through cycles of people dying, illnesses, car crashes, just, anything that you get, adversity at work. And she's like questioning, okay, what is this because of the trial? What is causing this in my life? Because she's always had control of everything. It's like throwing the ball in the middle of a game and everybody's, focused on the ball that's already there. And of course, everything falls then. So her life goes through a down cycle because she's added one more thing to her life and she's out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have balance in your life and you don't have complete joy in your life, you end up subject to other people's whims too for what they want for your life because you're not focused.
Right. Right. And does that relate with your own life?
When I wrote it, I didn't think it did.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't think it did. I thought I was writing these characters, and I have a very methodical way of writing because I do academic writing by trade.
Uh-huh.
And, so I would do a SOAP note, if you know what that is. If anybody in the medical community, it's basically the whole background on a person. And I thought, I didn't think it had anything to do with me other than maybe poor work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised, that work was the most important thing in your life. But then as life made its twists and turns for me, shortly after I wrote the book, my life started going through some of the same adversities. First, it was a divorce. Then it was my mom had cancer, breast cancer, and she passed away. Then to the day, my mom died on September 19th. To the day, my adopted son was shot and killed in a workplace accident on September 19th. So it was like this down cycling, and I was in the winds just like you would see in Paris's life. And I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? But it did prepare me. And that's why I said resilience is about preparation. When you're doing the things for yourself that you're supposed to do, you can store up energy. Mm-hmm. And so I was more prepared because when you're going through adversity and you can't always gear what other people's intentions, you have to be able to protect yourself. I'm going to say, in the world of politics, they say, protectionism or that. No, what about protectionism of yourself? Mm-hmm. How are you putting the healthy boundaries to make sure you're getting the nurturing you need? Are you nurturing yourself or are you nurturing everybody else? And in myself, I found that I was putting too much into other people. And even though I thought I was balanced, when I looked into it, the time that I was considering me time, I wasn't doing the things that I would consider joyful to myself. I might be watching TV. When I did an inventory of the things I enjoy, TV was like the 26th.
Yeah.
I spent so many hours watching TV then,
You're right. Yeah.
Movies and stuff. I love to cook. I love to socialize, all of these other things. Why was I spending most of my time doing the things that didn't bring joy to myself?
Right. So what was, I'm still so sorry to hear that about your passings, but what was it like mental wise going through that even after you have already written the book? Were you starting are you starting another book or?
I have 4.
Oh, okay. Wow.
They're not all published. The first, it's a series. Each character in Crossroads has its own story of adversity and challenges, and so the second one I'm hoping to have out at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
The process that I found in the whole, not only writing the book, but facing the adversities is the first thing I always tell anybody. They're like, how did you live through it? Recently, I just had someone said, I lost my daughter. She's only 5 years old. How did you do it?
Mhm.
And it, and I feel like it was a spiritual thing because I accidentally sent a text message to
Mhm.
that person, and I knew their situation, but I'd sent it. Took a picture of a letter that my son had written, and I was sending it to his daughter for the first time,
Mhm.
and so she could see it. I felt like she was of the age she could handle the situation. And how did you do it? And I said, well, the first thing is you have to realize there is no perfect way, and put
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other. Just like Frosty the Snowman. Because if you put one foot in front of the other, soon you have passed that particular moment and gone to the next that you can deal with it.
Yeah.
And try to find the joy in the adversity. And you're like, how can you find joy in the adversity? Well, one thing that I found is the people around me that also were mourning. So, um, my adopted son or guardian son, he we maintained a relationship with his mother. So we
Mhm.
not only raised the son together, we mourned the son together.
Yeah.
And to this day, that relationship is something I find joy in. I may not talk to her every day, but I find joy in the fact that when we made the decision, we made a healthy boundary decision, and it was able to bring us through that adversity, through the trial, through the heartbreak, disappointment when the justice system didn't prosecute the killer
Mhm.
and let him go. And and we but at the same time, the bond there was beautiful. I
Yeah.
had met a woman that shared their child with me. It
Mhm.
doesn't get any better than that.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, it doesn't. And so, in every adversity, whether it be um, my mother with cancer, we would find things to laugh about.
Mhm.
We when we went to chemo, she's like, "I want to just get out of here," and I said, "Good thing, my sister's coming because I'm going with you." you know,
Yeah.
and laugh because she's like,
Mhm.
"I want to put this poison in my body,"
Yeah.
and so you just find those little moments and those little glimpses. It could be just walking outside to get some vitamin D from the sun.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
find those moments that get you through. And in the first 10 seconds of an adversity, whether it be a death or a, life changing event, you can't stop yourself from the reaction, but
Mhm.
gather your thought. I can remember when I got some bad news one time. When I got it, I was so startled. The only thing that brought me together was a crack that was in the wall. You know how when a wall settles and it makes a crack just right, as small as a crack, and I followed it all the way to the ceiling.
Mhm.
And it was that moment for me to gather my brain, my thoughts, my emotions, and say, you can do this. Just put one foot in front of the other, and you can do it. And then you lean on the other tools.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And what has your journey of being an author, what has that been like? Where did you start, as far as, were you in self-publishing, or did you have a publisher? What was that journey like?
So I used what they call a mixed publisher. Okay, so
Mhm.
they have they will help you do the marketing. They will help you get it on Amazon. They help you do all of that, but then they do the editing, etc. So it's not fully self and
Mhm.
not fully traditional.
Okay.
They made the introductions for you. It's the company's called Mindster, and then from there, I was able to develop. They help you create the brand of what you
Mhm.
wanted to do. Because what I had decided when I did it is, I want to be able to help other people, not just write. I love writing. I mean, I love academic writing, I love fiction writing, but I love being able to make an impact on people. So I wanted my brand to be not just about a fiction book.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be one that left an impression. And so then it was picked up by Meryl Hemingway, and she did an endorsement, um, probably because she's all about life balance and finding your own spirituality through nature.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it's important that we share our life lessons. When you
Absolutely.
work on your own skills and learn from others, you provide not only yourself some mindfulness and resilience, you provide other people the same balance and mind
Mm-hmm.
resilience. And yes, it's a fiction novel. People are like, how can you learn from a fiction novel? Well, let me tell you. The main premise at the end of the whole journey of the first one is, what do you know about people?
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about yourself? And in Proverbs, it says, anger is cruel and fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy?
Mm-hmm.
And as women and men every day, if you think of anything that's terrible in the world, what's usually involved? Anger, fury, jealousy. But you know what the final verse part of that is? Is envy makes the bones rot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as envy makes the bones rot, it's like a cancer. It metastasizes and you no longer have yourself. So I kind of go back to some of the things that my father told me when I was young. There was 5 of us. Life isn't fair. Quit comparing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You compare yourself, you're robbing yourself of you. Well, envy makes the bones rot. If you're comparing yourself, eventually you're going to do crazy things. You see it in little kids. You're my best friend.
Yeah.
Check or whatever it may be. If you start at a young age addressing some of these things, wouldn't life be better if we just loved who we were?
Yes. It's a lot easier said than done, but yes.
Every day you look on TV and, oh, I want to be skinnier. I want to be this. I want to be that. I want to be,
Yeah.
higher educated. I want to be this. But you're robbing yourself. What is your purpose? What are you
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be? And I would never have thought I was supposed to be a writer.
Yeah.
God pushed me there, or my higher power, however you want to, put it.
Right.
God
Mm-hmm.
pushed me there. I flunked my high school English proficiency test.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was meant for me to be a writer, I had to struggle through it.
Absolutely.
So what is it that and maybe someone else might be manufacturing, and maybe sales, and maybe business, healthcare, whatever their purpose is. Everybody has a love. I recently talked to a family member, and their love is elderly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't have the ability to face death like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? The ability for this family member is their joy.
Yeah.
That 100-year-old person is the most joyful person to them, and making them still have a purpose-filled life. So
Yeah.
everybody has a purpose. It's a matter of finding it. And so don't compare yourself to someone else's purpose, because that might not be it for you.
Yeah. And what are the other books? I'm very interested now. I want to read these books. I want to, because you're
So,
very intriguing.
so Crossroads was the first one. The second
Right.
is called Chosen, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got a young woman born and raised in the same area, because obviously she's going to be in the same legal system, and she's just very naive. And
Mm-hmm.
she gets herself into situations over and over and over again, and it's how we raise young ones sometimes to be victimized by
Yeah.
not addressing their um, values and thought systems that trust people too much,
Mm-hmm.
or where people say, oh, they're gullible, they're green, whatever name you want to label it.
Yeah.
people will exploit those characteristics in people. So how do you become loving and be the person that you are naturally without putting your, it's still healthy boundaries, but without putting yourself in jeopardy, so that's the second one. The third one is about domestic abuse, but it's
Hmm.
the thing. And then the fourth one is about the system keeping people oppressed.
I like that. I'm definitely excited. So, what are the release dates for those?
Okay, so like I said, Chosen, I'm hoping that'll come out at the beginning of the year. There is a workbook that is scheduled to attach with Crossroads. It's called Crossroads, a Life Balance Career. It's a workbook for people that said, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm not in sync with myself. I want to work on this characteristic for me." It's supposed to be out in November, and then each one I'm hoping will have a workbook. The only workbook that I have had with um, written right now is the life balance.
Oh, okay. And I like when you were speaking about boundaries. So, what would you suggest is the best way for people to not be flexible within their boundaries?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'll acknowledge if you're good at it. Too
Mhm.
strict or not good enough. Myself, I'm not good enough. I
Yeah.
excuses for people. Quit making excuses. If they show you who they are, know who they are. That doesn't mean that they can't ever change, but don't put yourself in a situation that you're going to be the one continually making excuses and overcoming. Let them do their own struggles.
Mhm.
I struggle with that daily, and I'm not telling you I'm perfect. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, what are their core values that are good? Help
Mhm.
them focus on those core. Just because someone shows you who they are doesn't mean you don't associate with them. It means you
Right.
have a boundary there that, wait a minute, no, I'm not paying your bills. No, I'm not, taking care of your kids because you don't want to, whatever it might be, right? but, but, but when you know that they're in a situation,
Mhm.
you set the healthy boundaries in the parameters. You have that discussion. If you see someone struggling through adversity, you can help them. My son's mother at the time when he moved in, there was two things going on there. One, he had gotten in a fight at school and she couldn't send him back. She was
Mhm.
she was afraid something was going to happen, and he was young, so, and he was great in sports, and she's like, he has a bright future in front of him. So, I'm like, just bring him to me and we'll work it out, and we did. She was able to, during that period, to go and get her master's in divinity.
Oh, nice.
you, when you set the healthy boundaries, you can set a lifestyle for everybody involved that is productive, that brings people to um, a um, approach to their life that shows others on how to move forward in adversity. Unhealthy boundaries, if you don't set them, then you're running over each other. It's total chaos. So if you're in
Mhm.
a situation, you're like, why is everything always chaotic? Look at the boundaries.
Yeah.
Sit down and draw out all the people. Make circles. How do they connect? What is the relationships in them? And say, okay, what could we change one thing at a time? It doesn't have to be, if you find 10 things wrong, you're not going to change them all. Pick one thing. Okay, we're not getting healthy food in our bodies. Well, that's the number one thing that's going to help with your resilience is energy. So, try to get some fruits and vegetables. Make it fun for the kids too. Make little bears out of the fruit. Whatever you have to do. Uh,
Yeah.
and then but pick one thing at a time. And then as you address it, if you can do it on your end, that's great. If you need help, get a counselor, get a mentor. It's not that traumatic.
I understand that. And what about like writer's block? Have you ever experienced that, or do you?
I do.
Mhm.
My kind of my thought typically, because I do academic writing, I probably write 40 pages of documents a day.
Mm-hmm.
So what I typically will do is change the project for a second. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, writing block, I could turn music on if it's fiction. Sometimes there might be a word, like let's say you're doing something that has to do with crying the blues. You know, someone's just crying the blues, and you're like, how am I going to do that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's music on.
Yeah.
If you're talking about um, life, you know, then Google some things that a mentor might say. If you're and read through it. If you're talking about, like, I had probably the hardest one for me was doing a um, autopsy. I mean, I've never done an autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I said, okay, where's a textbook on, right, you know, how they do an autopsy, and I saw the different ways that they did autopsies.
Mm-hmm.
For the police scene, you know, I'm not a police officer. I've never been a detective. So I picked up the phone and called a friend that was a police officer and said, "Can I ride with, you know, what's the program where people can ride with him? Did I see a dead body? No.
Mm-hmm.
Did I learn from that lesson? Yes, because I learned the banter that officers go through, and how they talk to each other and what they do to get each other through the day. Uh,
Yeah.
one of the writing blocks in Crossroads is I was like, okay, I got to drop the body somewhere because it has to be found. And I'm like, where would you drop a body down? And I was driving on a road, and I was like, all of a sudden, you know, it was kind of foggy and hazy, and there was a black bird that fluttered. So inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it really, what you do is you just let your mind be open to whatever is revealed to you. So where I thought it was only going to be about injustices in the system, the characters sometimes took over.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, all of a sudden they're, you know, they took it in two different directions. So you know, it it's all about the process of getting the story out, and being a storyteller is a big part of it. I came from some of the greatest storytellers. I had a grandfather that could make a 15-year-old girl want to go get a job during the Depression, because he made the story of him getting a job in the Depression sound like the most biggest adventure in the world, you know?
Yeah.
Wanted to live in the Depression. Nobody, of course.
Uh-huh.
But he
Right.
made it sound like this experience, you know, this journey. And if we approach life that way, I think, you know, we come out the other end, you know, on a better person.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. So it's more about also doing the research yourself to make it even better, kind of gaining that experience, gaining more wisdom to be able to kind of put your mind in that same state to keep going.
Exactly, because you know, and that's life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the doctor says you have a stomach problem,
Mm-hmm.
don't you get on the computer and start googling and reading?
Yeah.
You get stuck, whether it be in life or whether
Mm-hmm.
it be in, just make sure it's a good valued source, because you don't want to get the wrong information. But and start a research, talk to people, you know, talk to other doctors. We do all kinds of stuff. So why wouldn't we do that in our own lives, you know, or you know, or in this case, writing? You know,
Mm-hmm.
just you open yourself up to learn, being a life learner.
Yes.
And when you're
Absolutely.
a learner, you know, it doesn't matter if you're looking at something about a dog, you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to gain something from it.
Yes. I like that. I like that a lot. And do you offer anyone like where you're able to help them in writing a book, or where to go to publish a book via your website or?
I would always, yes, I offer mentoring services. My main primary mentoring services is career development,
Mhm.
college admissions, and academic um, excellence. if someone was interested in learning how to write a book, I don't write them for you.
Yeah.
I can definitely help you through the process. Yes, because I can tell you there are a lot of people out there that will exploit you. As soon as you say you want to write a book, you know,
Hmm.
the predators may come out, because
Hmm.
like everybody has a story within they like to like want to say, okay?
Right.
Do. So it's about creating a process that works for you. If you're not a good typer, there's devices out there that you can speak into the microphone and it will type it right there in your computer for you. If you're not a good editor, there's editing tools out there now that that can help you edit and get it
Hmm.
ready for the for publication. And then I always say you probably want to hire at the very end. That's something I would put money into, is doing the edit. It is doing a professional edit, because nobody wants a book that has a lot of errors in it. You can't find everything. There's no such thing as a perfect document. I could go in there right now and find improvements in Crossroads. Because
Hmm.
every time you read something, you're like, oh, if I did this or if I did that. So at
Hmm.
some point, you have to do the cutoff, and maybe that's when the new editions come out.
And what did you mean by there's predators out there? Is there a lot of scams, or what did you mean by that?
Or people that know that you don't know, and they charge you way more than than it really would cost for you to put it on the site.
Hmm.
And they'll say, oh, we'll put it on there for $1,500,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh, I don't have that kind of money. Well, it may be that you can do some things on your own. You have to have a plan. What
Hmm.
can you afford? What can you do on your own? What are your skill sets, and what's your team going to look like? You Nobody can work in an island on their own.
Absolutely.
So you have to have a plan to. It's the same thing. Healthy network boundaries for business.
Hmm.
Because you wrote something, that's creative.
Hmm.
Creative process. Then you have the business process.
Right.
Okay, you could pay someone to do it all for you.
Hmm.
Cost you though, and people get upset about that.
Hmm.
But there are some things you can do on your own, and some things you can't. And you have to know your skill balance is there. So if you're only a creative person, then you need to be putting money back you know, for the other process. Because even if you go with a traditional publishing company, they're only going to do, X number till you prove yourself.
Hmm.
You have to know the industry, learn the industry. How are the books get into the bookstores? What's the process? It doesn't happen just, oh, I published a book and it's in the bookstore. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you have to do the networking. You have to put the business process in there. So if you're not thinking like that, oh yeah, anybody can come and say, oh yeah, we can get it out there. This is what and it may take you years. It may not at all. Happens. So yeah, you need to have a plan.
And how long did it take for you to release Crossroads?
Well, that is where my lessons learned from the business part. I wrote Crossroads in 2002.
Hmm. Oh, goodness.
Of them. And then, like I said, I had a publisher, and I had to step away from that because of the healthy boundaries.
Hmm.
And then I thought, oh, I'll just find another publisher. But guess what? My life, like I said, went through some changes. One day I went to get something off of the floppy disk, and the floppy disk had eaten a few things.
Oh, man.
And I looked at the printed copy, and I'm like, am I going to have to type all this? And I was able to get everything back in order and get all of the files recovered and got them saved in 100 different places and
Yeah.
format. And so that's when I said, okay, it's time to get serious again and make myself vulnerable. See, if you're following your purpose, you have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
What if you get a no from the traditional publishing companies? What if, something happens and, you find out you can make money in the self publishing aspect of it more? You have to find the right business model for you.
Hmm.
So what if people don't like what you wrote?
Right.
You
Hmm.
know, you have to be willing to make yourself vulnerable. And vulnerability, a lot of times people think, oh, that's a bad characteristic. Not always. Sometimes it
Hmm.
makes you grow. You got to
Yeah.
push yourself out of that comfort zone. So I had to get myself, especially with the pandemic. Everybody's so used to staying home and doing everything in their own life that they've forgotten, okay, wait a minute, there's a world out there and you got a life to live, and sometimes you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And as a researcher, I'm in front of the computer. I'm going to turn into a chair one day if I don't, if I get out and start talking to people and see people and do things that are also in my purpose. So making yourself vulnerable makes you have to change. That's that game of uncle.
Oh, I like that. But man, when you said floppy disk, it has been so long since I heard of a floppy disk. I mean, I think I had floppy disk when I was in middle school.
You
So
can.
it's like, yeah, if you don't have that disc and you had to start over. I'm glad that you were able to find it in different areas because
Yes.
man,
But you can just imagine how many when you go through conferences and stuff like that, writing, and I did that when I first started writing, and they would always say some of the best novels are in a closet.
hmm hmm
And I'm like, what do you mean? And then I started looking at mine. I'm like, mine's going to be in the closet when mine if I don't do something about it. So
yeah,
you have to willing to put yourself out there.
yeah.
If you don't put yourself out there, all the things that you've struggled through in life would be for what?
I like that you said mine's gonna be in the closet if I don't do something. I was like, that could be like the title. That is, I love that. That is an amazing saying. I like that a lot.
And think about all the people that have all the skills out there. One of your people out there right now are saying, has some kind of skill out there that they're dying to use or have been using, and guess what? It's in the closet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're not utilizing it. Maybe they've out of survival, they've got they're working in one job, but their passion is in another. I'm not saying quit your job. I'm saying make yourself vulnerable in the other area, whether through volunteer work, whatever it may be. Pull it out, dust it off, enjoy it, even if it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Why am I ordering DoorDash every week?
hmm
When I
Absolutely.
love to cook.
hmm
So start putting those processes in place, and then you have to start thinking, okay, what about the health part of it? You at least know what you're putting in your own kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
And not everybody's meant to cook, but that's just an example. There's so many passions that we have out there. How about the people in your life? Are you putting the passion in them that
hmm
you should be?
Right.
Whether it be a parent, a loved one, a sibling, are you talking to them? Are you encouraging them? There's so many ways that we can put joy and love and peace back in our life without destroying your own peace.
Yeah. I agree. I like that a lot. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda. If there's anything that you have to add, that any type of suggestion or advice, what would it be?
If I were to say anything to you, one, thank you. It's
Uh-huh.
a podcast. And two, just know adversity isn't permanent.
hmm
Don't get stuck in the mud. This is not adversity is not quicksand unless you allow it to be. There, anybody in life, you know, can get stuck for a moment because whatever it may be that you're going through. But if you go back to your core values, your skill sets, and your strengths, you can overcome it. And
hmm
be kind to each other. Don't be cruel. If you get angry at someone, make it up. And definitely know what Proverbs says, and that is jealousy stands before all. And when we start getting jealous, and when you start feeling it yourself or your kids, realize that's destroying them.
hmm
Don't encourage it. Stop gossiping about each other. Quit tripping each other in the halls at work, and trying to sabotage others, to get ahead. Instead, promote each other, work with each know who you're working with, create those healthy bonds that can bring a society to a point, and you to a point that, what, we're all thriving.
I like that. I like that a lot. And what are the best ways for the listeners to reach you? And I'm also going to add it to the description box as well. But what are the best ways?
Um, Everything's pretty easy. RhondaParkerTaylor.com. On Facebook, it's Rhonda Parker Taylor. On Instagram, it's Rhonda Parker Taylor. I think Twitter's the only one that's Rhonda P1. But if you go to my website, it's definitely, you can click on the links there. Rhonda's with an H, and that's the only trick to it, is making sure you put the H in there.
Well, thank you so much for that. And like I said, it'll be in the description box below as well. But other than that, thank you so much for coming on today, Rhonda.
Thank you for having me. Glad we could connect.
No problem, everyone. Thank you and stay blessed.
Bye, everybody.